Hi, welcome back to Recruitment and Beyond podcast. We are joined today by Andrew, who is the CEO of Kulea. Now, Kulea are a marketing automation tool that we use here at Eden Scott, and we thought it'd be a good chance to chat to Andrew about, basically the full tech stack in terms of recruitment and HR and how that's changing and what that looks like these days. So, Andrew, great to have you with us.
Sure, thank you very much.
Going to have a bit of a discussion on the tech stack today. I think it is changing fast. It's changing pretty quickly, and we're all kind of trying to adapt. So I suppose I wanted just to give the audience a bit of an insight into what Kulea do, and your role there at Kulea and the journey it's been on.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'll give you a bit of an overview. It's been a roller coaster. Now, Kulea is an email marketing automation platform. Now, think of us akin to something like HubSpot Marketing Suite or MailChimp. But our key differentiator is we act as a layer. We plug into ATSs and CRMs. So, as an example, I know you work with Ventura, Ewan, at your ATS. We have a native Ventura integration. What that allows you to do and our customers to do is it allows you to communicate at scale. We have found over the years is that a lot of clients use their ATS, the CRM, I wish there's a data dump.
Yes.
It becomes a database. It becomes a repository for all that data that they got in there. And it's not used as a kind of a real dynamic marketing or communication tool. What Kulea does is we access that data, we give you the means to communicate at scale, to track, to enrich, to make more of that data, to make more of your dormant database.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, so often that data is just put in there and then forgotten about as they crack on with other things and other parts of the business. And it's such a vital part of marketing, but it's a vital part of any business is to have good data. And actually, that kind of takes us on to that first question, which is around, I suppose, the AI integration that a lot of people are kind of working on these days in terms of the systems that they're bringing on. But a lot of this depends on the quality of your data, the data foundations that you're building your business on. So what sort of thing, how impactful is poor quality data to the AI systems that people are looking to bring into their organization?
Yeah, there's a simple way of describing it. AI doesn't fix bad data problem. It massively amplifies it. If you put garbage in, you get very confident, very plausible sounding, very efficient garbage out.
Yes.
And it's, we always used to talk about that and database terminology, crap in, crap out.
Yes.
It's exactly the same, but at scale with AI. And it's almost that plausibility that is the biggest trap to fall into. It will analyze your database. It will tell you these are the right candidates. These are the right clients. These are the customers you need to be talking about. This is what you should be talking about. This is how often you should be talking. And it sounds very convincing. But if the data isn't complete, or even worse, you're getting false flag data, which happens a lot. I can talk a little bit more about that as well in the conversation. You will find that you're just firing off in all the wrong directions. And actually what you're doing is you're damaging your reputation. You're damaging those relationships. So it's absolutely critical to make sure you've got the data foundations in place before you do anything else. And it's exactly the same for marketing automation, to be fair. It's all about communication.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and I talk through a lens of staffing and recruitment, ATS, but going back to your point there earlier, this is not a staffing and recruitment problem. This is ubiquitous in all industries. We will see first thing we do when we bring on board a new Kulea client, and before we even connect to their ATS, what we'll say is, well, look, let's audit the data. And what we'll tend to find is 60 to 70% of that data is dormant. It's not been communicated with, don't I say it, they, because these are people. They've not been communicated with. We need to anthropomorphize this data because this isn't data. These are real people we're talking about. They've not been communicated with 6 to 12 months. Specifically on a client side data, when we run a validation process on that, we'll find that 30, 40% of the data is invalid. These people don't work at these companies. B2B, people move on, people retire, job titles change, salary expectations change, everything changes. The only thing you can guarantee is change. And if your database, your CRM or your ATS is just a snapshot of a single moment in time, then it's going to fail in its duty as a CRM. It's customer relationship management. You can't have a relationship with someone unless you know them. So back to basics on that one, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose that goes for automation as well. I mean, we started there on AI, but obviously there's quite a lot of transition. I think sometimes there's definitely some people who mix them up, but I suppose, Kulea is known for automation. So, in your experience, where can that add most value, and where can it really, cause problems and make it go wrong if the data is not right?
Yeah, I've got a lovely example. So, I'm sure you know Bullhorn. Big ATS, very popular, one of the world's most popular. They've got, and I'm sure they'll forgive me for saying this, they've got a fairly significant problem with false flag events from email.
Right.
So, for example, you send out an email campaign, lots and lots of bot clicks, bot opens, false engagement, and it's these aren't bad malicious bots. These are the Googles and the Microsoft of the world scanning your emails, checking to make sure your content is safe, making sure that there's no malicious code in there or anything like that. So they're doing a good thing. But if you're basing your automations off the back of those events, those open events and those click events, and they're not genuine, then you're opening yourself up to a whole world of pain. And it's not just Bullhorn that suffers this. It's ubiquitous across all email marketing. Email bots will open and click emails. It's about making sure that actually that the data you're using filters those out. And there's that level of human oversight. And I think we'll probably come back to this point again and again during this conversation, specifically with AI, but also with automation, is you need to have human oversight. You need to have human in the loop for these things. And that level of common sense creates the difference between a successful communication campaign and a successful relationship, and one that is burnt very, very quickly.
No, absolutely. I think that human insight is going to become more and more important as we go forward, because people are trusting these systems now that without really interrogating what it's doing, what its output is, and because it seems plausible and the information seems like it's relevant, but actually, as you say, once you dig into it, it starts to open up a can of worms.
Absolutely. Critical thinking. I know this is something we'll probably be discussing later, but critical thinking has become, fun enough, critical because you need to be able to not only understand the data that's coming back. You don't need to understand deep data, but you need to understand the reasoning behind why is that data come back? Why has the agent returned this data rather than that data? What lens is it being evaluated through? And if it's being evaluated through, I was going to say staffing and recruitment because it's the space we know best. If it's being evaluated through, for example, historic data that's sitting in your ATS, now that has been created and it has been updated by people. People, as we know, one of my I studied behavioural economics and digital psychology at university. People are crap. Loaded with all sorts of internal biases that it's there, and the biases are reflected in the data if it's historic data. And if you are then using AI on that data, then the biases get amplified. So it's just being aware of these things and making sure that you account for them. And if you were sending out, communications, you wouldn't want to use protected traits, for example, in your segmentation. You've got to be very careful about things like that to make sure that you're not reinforcing those biases, whether that be human or AI.
No, that is interesting actually, because that, and we'll maybe come back to touch on this, but that subconscious bias in some cases, it will absolutely come through, because that's just the nature of it, and that will be reinforced as the data is used and enhanced and developed and grown upon, because that's AI, and all these systems learn from what's there. They're not surmising their own. They're not creating their own hypothesis. Is what I'm trying. Yeah, they won't create their own hypothesis. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, you see this with the big tech AIs. You know, when they were first launched, the Groks and the ChatGPTs as well. I'm making a bold claim here. The internet is built on bias, and if your AI is trained on that horrible data, it's going to reflect it, and you need to consciously program that out. You know, it's not, you can't just accept it and go, yeah, that's fine, we'll just take the data as it comes. You know, you need to code the algorithms so that it makes allowance for those biases and overcomes them.
Absolutely. So I guess what you were suggesting there actually touches on the next question, which is about how people design their systems to do what they're looking to do. So, you know, instead of perhaps really going back to basics and saying, what do we want to achieve? Some people try to retrofit some of these automations and processes onto their existing approach. Why is that? I suppose, why is that a bad approach, and what sort of challenges do you see when people do attempt that?
I think, I mean, you get this a lot. Shiny new thing, great, plug it in, brilliant. Has it worked? No, of course it doesn't. You don't want to be starting with the shiny new thing. Start with the process. Look at the business. Okay, and you'll see this time and time. Look at the business processes. Look where you are currently. Look where you want to be. Do a gap analysis. Very simple. You know, bit of strategic talk there. Once you've done that gap analysis, you can say, okay, now what are the tools that I need to plug that gap? And just because AI is there doesn't mean AI is the right answer. It can help. I mean, I love AI. I absolutely love it, but it also drives me up the bloody wall. It does make you more efficient, but also, you know, it creates a whole other set of problems.
Well, and that is the interesting thing here, because obviously a lot of the approaches that we get approached a lot about recruitment tech, which is spot on. That's the nature of life. That's how you go about selling these things. But a lot of it is sold on efficiency, which is essentially saving you time. And we know that quite often people have time saved, and they maybe will get, systems will save them time, and yet we don't seem to improve the productivity across the company or the organization or the country for that matter. So why do you think that is? What is it that we're missing there and that ultimately leads to people not renewing systems? Well, we haven't seen any improvement in performance. So why do you think that is? It's a wee bit of a bold question, because obviously you can't go into the insight of every company, but I'm just interested to know why that doesn't seem to work.
Yes, but I can understand it, and that's not a technical problem. The efficiencies are there to be saved, and the tech does do that. What that is a managerial oversight problem and a process problem. Just because you get an extra 2, 5, 10 hours a week freed up, doesn't mean that me as a consultant or me as a talent manager, that I then go, great, I've got 2 hours free. I'm going to make those 2 hours really efficient and do really productive stuff in those 2 hours. That's not how human nature works. What you would do is, okay, great, I've got 2 hours. I'll fall back into my comfort zone and use those 2 hours. And it might be doing admin or whatever, but you're freeing up those hours. But how are those hours being spent?
Yeah.
And that's where those productivity gains, and that needs to be factored in from day one. It's not just saying, here's a great bit of kit, it's going to give you 3 hours more a day, then wander off and don't track it. What are the KPIs you're looking to achieve from this? What are the outcomes? What are you targeting the staff who you are freeing up more time for to then do with that time? And you need to be making sure you're measuring the right things.
I think that's a critical part, and that kind of leads on to the next question, which is that it has to be built in from the start, doesn't it? So any kind of tech that you bring in, any kind of tech stack you bring in, should be done from the business case, the business value point of view going forward, as you touched on, do a gap analysis and work out where the problem is, rather than retrofitting and saying, well, we've seen this shiny bit of kit, let's get it in and let's see how we can do it, because then you're absolutely not thinking about where like you say, what are we saving time for? We're saving time because, a good example for us might be CV parsing or CV formatting. Now that maybe takes however many hours throughout the week. once we save that time, what are we going to do? How are we helping the team to encourage them? How are we managing that? And that's the big thing. So I suppose there does still seem to be that knowledge gap around what AI can and can't do. But you need to start at the start, don't you? You need to start where's our business challenges, and we'll identify, because then AI becomes useful. It becomes a useful tool for organizations. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about those misconceptions, I suppose, around AI and what it can and can't do and where it can add value to businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to your point there you were making, if you've got those hours freed up, AI is coming. The way we look at it is, if you have to do the same job more than once and it's the same, then you can automate it. There's an AI and an automation in there. But we're obsessed with that stuff. So I wouldn't expect everybody to have that same level of enthusiasm for automation. But if you are seeing repetitive tasks, there's a time saving there to be made. AI is great at that stuff. Automation is great at that stuff. And I would tend to use those two terms interchangeably because they both solve the same problem.
Yeah.
And you'll find that as I'm talking. Now, where AI cannot step in and fill the breach is what we're doing now. This human engagement, these relationships, and this, I think, especially in staffing and recruitment, but actually in a lot of spaces, you're going to see a move towards, okay, you've freed up 3 hours here, great, that should translate into 10 more face-to-face conversations, 10 more cups of coffee with a client, 10 more cups of coffee with a customer, meeting up with candidates, in having calls like this. Where is that productivity moving to? Going back to the previous question. And if those KPIs are being measured, making sure that, okay, those productivity gains are in the places where AI doesn't tread. And again, it's being able to read the nuances of the room. Understanding when you're asking a candidate questions, looking at their body language, looking away, not making eye contact. Reading a hiring manager. A hiring manager might tell you what they want, but actually the experience, what they need rather than what they want. Understanding those nuances, those are so critical. And at this point in time, that is not where AI is. I made a note of this. I'm reading a great book at the moment called, this is a bit of a apologize, Enshittification, which is, if you look in the dictionary, I think it is now in the dictionary, it certainly entered the lexicon of business language. And this is what I'm worried about for AI, because what does AI do really well? Brilliant. AI is getting better and better and better and get more powerful and more powerful. Yeah, and some people get scared of that, and potentially rightfully so. And I know we've had conversations in the past about the upcoming end of the world and all the serving to our AI masters. That doesn't keep me awake at night. What keeps me awake at night is the enshittification of AI. Where, and I'm seeing this, I posted last week on LinkedIn, we're already starting to see the encroachment of enshittification. And enshittification is where you have a great product, a great platform, a great technology, and the first thing you do is you squeeze your customers dry, the end users dry, and you make it as crap as you can get away with and have them still using it. And then you apply the same logic to the advertisers, the brands that we're working with, the business clients that you're working with, and do the same thing to them. Yeah. And you end up with a product that is barely fit for purpose, but just about gets by. And we've seen it with Google. You've seen it with Facebook. You've seen it with all the social media platforms. It started off on day one. It was a great social space. Everybody climbed in. You had a lovely kind of social momentum there. They started selling adverts, and people would post content on there, and it's great. But you'd see content of brands that you liked and you followed, and pages that you liked. So you're okay with that. Yeah. And then slowly encroached until suddenly you were seeing advertising from brands that you weren't following, but you had no interest in whatsoever. Then the brands started to have to pay more and more to get their content, and it's all become a bit shit. Yeah. I'm starting to see this with ChatGPT. So I don't know if you use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So it started using clickbaity type questions at the end of every response.
Right.
And it's doing that because they've changed the algorithm, because they're now looking for engagement as a key output. Now, just after you start monetizing for engagement, you're going to start monetizing for advertising.
Yes.
It's inevitable. I can see Sam Altman and his band of merry sycophants rubbing their hands with glee, going, yeah, monetize ChatGPT even more. Not only are we going to bomb the hell out of other countries using ChatGPT, we're also going to bomb the crap out of our audience. They're going to, and it's going to get harder and harder to get the information, of the unbiased information you want, out of the AIs, because they are deliberately putting the brakes on it, because a quick and easy answer, where they get to reveal more advertising, more sponsored content, and it's where that's what keeps me awake at night. How potentially that is game-changing, world-changing, really good, will over time become crap deliberately as a monetization strategy. And that winds me right up.
That is fascinating, because that's exactly. I suppose I looked at it from a different perspective, but you're absolutely right. That clickbait approach is exactly what they're trying to do, is to understand the advertising, isn't it? So that's that's not ideal. But I suppose going forward, then this is a more challenging question, I suppose, but given what we're just talking about and the nature of the changes that are likely to come. But I suppose getting companies, if you're looking at it from an HR point of view or from a recruitment point of view, what do people need to do to get their business ready to do this properly, to really maximize what they've got, and to make use of automation and AI, whether that's data, but also the capability within your organization to be ready to implement this sort of stuff?
Yeah, how do they improve? So the most common mistake we see is automating a broken process. You end up with a broken process that just runs faster at a higher volume. And so start with the outcome. I think I mentioned this before, not the tool. Start with the outcome. What does a great candidate or hiring manager experience look like at each stage of a hiring funnel? And then work backwards from there. Which part of the journeys are currently inconsistent or slow? Where are the human bandwidth constraints? And we'll see this. A lovely automation we do is when a candidate is interview placement goes ahead, we'll make sure that an email goes out the working day before that interview. And it's just a little email reminder saying good luck tomorrow, or good luck at the interview next week. I hope it all goes well. Give me a shout if you've got any questions. Now, it's just such a small bit of communication, and it should be the process that is built into every candidate interview. But we all know it isn't, because consultants are busy, hiring managers are busy, it gets dropped. So something like that, it's a consistent touch point of what good candidate experience should look like. The 5-day follow-up NPS scoring. How did it go? How were we? How did we perform? Great. That should be fully automated. When a new candidate comes on board, they should be getting an email from the CEO, making them feel valued. All your communications, all your automations, ask yourself, does this make the recipient feel valued and respected? I'm not a big fan of automating rejection. That to me is too personal. It warrants, and I know it's hard to do that at scale. I get that. If you've got 1,000 candidates applying for one job, to email every single one or 999 of them to say sorry, didn't make the grade, is really hard. But there's going to be a middle ground there. There's going to be like, how can we personalize? And it's things like that where the managers need to start and say, okay, look at the process, look at the funnel, see how they go through, see where the bumps are in that pathway, and can we smooth those bumps out with automation or with AI indeed?
Do you think, so as we're going forward, and obviously there's AI systems that are looking at the full hiring process. We've always been of the mindset it's a very personal thing. and it's important. There's a kind of relationship between the hiring manager or the recruitment consultant and then the candidates. Do you think people still are looking for transparency in that process? So, if there is an AI involved in the decision-making process, is it important that organizations, whether it's recruitment or it's just an organization that has an HR team or whatever it is, do you think that, do you think it's important? Do you think people still value that in terms of their interaction with companies?
I absolutely think they value it, but whether they value it or not, it's kind of becoming irrelevant because the EU AI Act says that you have to be transparent.
Yeah.
You can't get away with running AIs in the background. If somebody asks the question, if they say, okay, so why did you choose me? Why did you not choose me? And you've left that decision to an AI, that's going to become this is critical information. This is critical decision making. It's flagged as high risk by the EU. So you're going to have full accountability on why you made those decisions. Yeah. And if those decisions have used an AI, then you need to be able to explain the decision making process that drove the AI.
Yeah.
Going back to the point, if you're just looking at historic data and biases that are coming across, then you're liable, and there's potentially a hefty fine coming your way. So there is the whole other level of what we do. We should be communicating. We should be transparent, but you're also going to have to be.
Yeah.
It's like the GDPR moment for AI, where everyone's got to go. We've got to have everything documented.
Here we go.
Articulated, because people will be right to ask those questions.
And
if you didn't get the job because your CRM data was missing a couple of fields, and actually you are qualified, you do have those skills, and it was just a poor data problem, and you missed out as a result of that because the AI didn't surface that data, then absolutely.
That's massive. Do you think enough people understand that in your experience?
Not yet.
No.
But they will.
Well, fines tend to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
And the irony here is they will be using AIs themselves and to write their legal letters.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness. Where does it end? I suppose I'm interested in this because I know that it can go to the nth degree, but personalisation is a key part of what Kulea does, but it's also a key part of where things can go with AI and automation. And it's arguably a better experience for candidates and clients. So what sort of thing that should be people looking at? What sort of things should people look at in terms of personalisation? What's too far? And what's not far enough? What's that sweet spot? I appreciate that's $1 million question, I'm sure, but it's just trying to work that out and what that looks like.
It's a great question. I spend a lot of time. I do. My team do. I look at them in awe. My team spend a lot of time using. Are you familiar with Clay, Ewan?
Clay, yes.
Yeah. So Clay's brilliant. So Clay to me is the ultimate personalization engine. And I say that because personalization to me is not dear forename. It is definitely not. And it also isn't scraping an opening line for an email from your AI profile. It's just trying to do the bloody wall. I get those emails all the time. I post about them on LinkedIn, so wind me right up. Good personalization is about being aware of the context. It's about, and this is where Clay comes in really handy. Personalization. We've got clients that a staffing recruitment client. It works in the hospitality industry. We go out and we find data from client data for them based on hotels and events that are recruiting at that particular moment in time. Great. So we've got a recruitment drive. We'll reach out to them. We'll pass that communication across. Right time, personalization. They have a need. I have another client who works in the construction sector. And what we're doing is we're working with a construction planning tool where the moment planning permission is granted to a construction project and we know who the primary contractor is and the secondary contractor, We take secondary and primary contractor data, we put it into Apollo, we find the hiring managers, we then manage the outreach through Kulea, talking to them about, hey, I noticed that you have this particular project coming up. Do you need to staff it? Invariably, the answer is yes. That to me is personalisation. It's about understanding the concept, the timing, the needs of the recipient of your communications, and making sure they map to the communications that you're sending out. It goes beyond. It's also a channel as well. Do they want to be contacted on email? Do they want a phone call? Do they want a postcard? Do they want a carrier pigeon? It's about understanding and respecting who they are, communicating with them based on their needs. This is a use case where AI genuinely knocks it out of the park. It's about being able to look at those intent signals, mapping them. Clay agents are great. A clay agent is an AI agent in Clay, if you didn't know. Great play on words there. But they will then take that information, they will personalize it, they will create a compelling narrative behind it, and then feed that into your outreach, communication, marketing engine. Really, really useful. And even if it's just snippets of information for your consultants to read, a company profile information, context, what's been going on in the news recently, that compiling that publicly available data into something that is then usable and relevant to the recipient, that really helps.
And that, would you use an AI agent to kind of oversee that, or would you use some kind of supports, or is it always going to be a human review? I suppose from my point of view, it's if that is an email going out, or there's a social post going out, or some kind of communication going out, you want to understand what's working and what's not, particularly if you are doing it at scale. And I suppose you really want to kind of delve into that so that it can optimize itself and learn from what it's putting out there.
Yeah, completely. So I'm a massive fan of human in the loop, as the expression goes. I don't believe there are ever use cases for AI going out into the wild unsupervised. You need to have that human oversight. You need to always be A/B testing, go back to your point, what's working, what's not, optimizing it accordingly. If you are using AI to optimize, AI optimizes to the nth degree, to the point where it starts fabricating communications in order to get engagement. So again, you've got to be very careful. We're working with a PR, well, potentially working with a PR comms agency that is looking at crisis management and how AI data snippets being produced by Google on Chrome or everywhere are actually representing brands and pulling incorrect data, things like that. And you've got to be so careful with what's being reflected. You've got to tie it down really tightly.
Wow. Again, we've had a few $1 million questions today, but what does future-proofing your tech stack look like? I'm interested to know what that can, like, particularly for recruitment and HR companies, as you understand.
Yeah, it's about connectivity. This is the critical kind of trend we're seeing. It's not really a trend. It's been this for the last 10 years or so. Used to be the days of single stack solutions. Your massive Salesforce enterprise level stacks where Salesforce supposedly did everything and everything. HubSpot's kind of gone the same way now. That's not how you need to be building your stack. Best of breed. Find the tools that do some things really well. Marketing automation, for example, use Kulea. But make sure those tools talk to the rest of your stack. So you're passing data. Make sure you've got somebody who, at the very least, understands tools like Zapier, those connections, middlemen connectors. Better still, someone who can be a little bit geeky that actually understands ETLs, understands how to surface the right data. And you're not necessarily going to find those tools sitting in, for example, your ATS. Again, we're working for Amply, brilliant AI tool that sits on top of the ATS to help surface the data. you will find that you've got best of breeds that you can plug in, you can run with. They're easily interchangeable.
Yeah.
Things evolve and things will evolve. That is the one guarantee, is we are moving at such a rate of change now. The companies, the people that succeed will be the ones that are able to adapt, accept change, that don't work. This is the way we've always done things, and this is the way we're always going to do things. That is the biggest red flag in recruitment, and I think that's the biggest red flag in every industry.
Yeah.
I remember reading, it was an Amazon piece about their recruitment approach, and what they're looking for is people that are always building momentum, always changing, always adapting, always running. If you're the kind of person that sits in a traffic jam and just sits there honking your waiting, that's not the right person. If you're the kind of person who goes, you know what, I'm going to take this little side road, see where that takes me. Might not save me any time, but I've learned something on the way. That's the kind of culture you want to encourage.
Absolutely. That is definitely me. I cannot stand sitting in traffic. I will go a long way around to avoid it. Oh my goodness.
Walk, honestly.
Yeah. You kind of touched on it there, but I just wanted to end today on I suppose the people and the behaviours, what we're looking for, and how do teams out there, HR teams, how do recruitment teams, what are they looking for in terms of their people to help them get the most from their future tech stack?
Yeah. You're looking for people that are data literate. Now, this doesn't mean that they have to be coders, doesn't need to understand PHP or HTML, but they need to understand how data works, how it gets created, how to maintain it in your ATS, how to interpret the outputs, how to question the outputs, because that questioning is going to become more and more critical. Pushback. AI loves pushback. Oh my God! I've completely pivoted. I've just exactly the opposite of what I just recommended 5 seconds ago, but I'm doing it with enthusiasm and confidence. Make sure that they are aware of the failings. Make sure. I mean, this is my kids are at school. They're teaching them critical analysis, critical thinking, critical questioning. It's going to be the skill that helps them the most in life. And same with these organizations. If people just take data at face value without digging into it, then they're going to come a cropper. Other skills is you're looking for the ability to form relationships, deep relationships, rather than breadth. You're going to have the tools. You already have the tools. I mean, you're using them, Ewan, that allows for that breadth of communication, those light touch surface points that keep your brand front of mind. They're incredibly important. But you're going to need people who are able to take those very light touch relationships and deepen them and make them more meaningful and convert them into, at the end of the day, revenues, profits. Because that's the end goal. Going to look for people that have strategic influence. And that's not just looking at the data, it's looking at employee branding, it's looking at culture, it's understanding more than just that single niche role. It's making yourself invaluable to the business and helping to guide the business. And going back to that previous point we made, it's all about adaptability. It's so important.
I think critically, I think that's the number one going forward, because we do some stuff with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, but we also go out to universities and so on, and trying to let people know what those skills look like in the future is really hard, because we just don't know. It's going to continually change and develop and grow, and being able to adapt it's going to be so critical. So now listen, that was a fascinating journey through the tech stack. I really enjoyed that, actually. Really a good discussion, and fascinating to hear where we think things are going and the opportunities there are for organizations. So if people are looking for insight into Kulea or anything else, where is best to find them? Find yourself, sorry.
Come and find us over on kulea.ma, that's Mama Alpha, or better still, come find me on LinkedIn. So it's Andrew Nicholson, Kulea, Kulea. Come and find me, send me a message. I'd always love to chat.
Excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you again for your time, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you, Ewan. Always a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Recruitment and Beyond podcast. Hopefully there was plenty of insight for you to take back to your teams. So don't forget to subscribe and never miss an episode. And if you can, leave us a review. We really appreciate all the feedback and support we get. It makes a massive difference.